students. Today we're going to revisit the topic of iteration. Now we've talked a little bit about iteration in the past. We've talked about how we can create a simple list of numbers using the range function and move through that list using a for loop. We've also discussed the accumulator pattern, how we can keep track of an information over time. Now, by using iteration and pairing that with the accumulator pattern, we can create some interesting behaviors. Consider, for example, if we want to sum all of the numbers up to a certain point. Well, we can write a simple function to do that, and you can see that here. We can start out by setting our accumulator value to be some base case, in this case 0, and then we want to take all of the numbers from 1 to our upper bound plus 1, again because range does not include the upper bound, and then for each number in that list, add that number to the sum and store it in the sum. By doing this, we can sum all the values up to a specific number. So in the case we want to find the sum to 4, we would do this and we would start out with 1. A number would be 1 plus 0 equals 1. Store that in the sum. Then a number becomes 2. So we have 2 plus 1, that's 3. 3 plus 3 is 6. And 4 plus 6 would be 10. And this would return 10 and print that out for us. In addition to the for loop, there's actually a second type of loop in Python called a while loop. Now the while loop can be thought of as an if statement that repeats until it becomes false. So if you think back to what we discussed in the selection chapter where we discussed Boolean conditions, the while loop takes a Boolean condition as its argument, and if that Boolean condition evaluates to true, the body of the loop runs. If it evaluates to false, it fails and jumps to the end and terminates the while loop. Now I want to discuss a little bit more about what an algorithm is. An algorithm is a step-by-step approach that is guaranteed to solve a specific problem. Algorithms are mechanical. They always work, and they always work the same way, but they can be limited by specificity. Sometimes many seemingly simple processes are difficult to express in an algorithmic thinking. For example, trying to identify the subject of a photo or process a natural language. Now we're going to talk a little bit more about image processing and how we can do that using Python. Images are made up of rows and columns of discrete points called pixels. A pixel is the smallest amount of information about a picture that's available. An image can be thought of as a grid of pixels, each with their own color and their own XY coordinate. Now pixels use what's called RGB colors. In this case, the color of a pixel is determined by 3 numbers corresponding to color values from 0 to 255, one each for the colors red, green, and blue. Each value represents how much light of a specific color comes through. Values closer to 0 are darker, with 0, 0, 0 representing the color black, and values closer to 255 are lighter, with 255, 255, 255 representing white. The reason for this is that you can think of a value of 0 means that there is no light coming through at all, and the absence of light creates darkness and creates the color black, whereas the color white represents an overabundance of light, so much light that you can't distinguish specific colors. So here's a simple table that illustrates how you might come up with some of the more common primal colors. So red, for example, is 255 of red light. There's lots of red light with no green and no blue to distract it. Similarly, you can come up with green or blue in the same way by changing which value has the light in it. If you want to mix the colors, you can come up with some interesting in-betweens. For example, yellow has lots of red light and lots of green light, but no blue light. And magenta has lots of red light and lots of blue light, but no green light. And you can also get cyan by having no red light, but lots of green light and lots of blue light. Now you can perform operations on images through an image module. Now we use a custom image module for this class that you can find in the resources section of MyGraceland. The image module, once placed in your program directory, can be imported by invoking import cimage. The image module can create an image object in your Python program that represents a file on your computer, or an image you create yourself in Python using this module, and you can perform operations on the image. The image module also allows you to use the pixel object to perform per pixel modifications to an image. To manipulate an image, once an image is loaded in, you can use this list of methods as a reference to figure out what you can do. So you can reference an individual pixel and get its red, green, or blue values, or set its red, green, or blue values. If you want to manipulate full image files, this is a list of methods you can do that. And these references are found in your textbook as well. So for example, if you want to create a new image, you can do this by creating a new variable to represent it and loading in from the image library the image. Now in this case, there's a couple typos here. First of all, the image library is called cimage rather than just image, so this should be C, with the letter C followed by a capital I on the word image. Secondly, the image library that we're using by default only supports GIF files, and so this tries to use a PNG file, which would not work. You can also use it to create an empty image, which is all white pixels. You can find the width or height of an image, and you can get a pixel at a specific column and row. Now you can do some interesting image manipulation here. By finding the width and height of an image, once you load it in, you can actually use for loops to iterate through every pixel in the image. So you can use a for loop to iterate through every column and every row in order, and then actually set that pixel to be the pixel color that you want to change. And so in this case, you can actually do this. And so for example, if you want to convert an image to grayscale, you simply get the pixel at a set location, compute its average light or dark color value, and set all three or create a new pixel that is the average of those for all three values, meaning it would be some shade of gray, and then set that pixel to it, and then move on to the next, and do this for every pixel in the image would convert a color image to grayscale. Now I do want to make one additional little sidebar here, and that is to talk about another element you'll find in Python, and that's called an escape character. We have talked a little bit about strings and how they work and how they're made up of common characters, text. But there are many characters in text that have special notation in programming languages. So for example, a quotation mark. How do you use a quotation mark in text if you want to have that quotation mark appear? Well, we've talked about how you can use different kinds of quotation marks around this, but what if you're trying to create a text file that explains all of these and you want to use examples? So you want to have a single quote, a double quote, and a triple quote all in the same string. Well, in this case, you would use an escape character. In Python, an escape character is any character that actually uses a two-character symbol for it, the first character being a backslash, and they have special meaning. So some common escape characters you'll see is the backslash double quote. This will actually create a printable double quote. It won't read it as the end of the string if you precede it with a single backslash. You can do the same thing with a single quote. You can use backslash T to create a tab indent. And you can use backslash N to create a new line. Now one of the things that's interesting is what if you want to actually create this symbol here where you have a backslash followed by a double quote? Well, if you want to actually create a backslash character, you use the double backslash. And so these are just some interesting characters that you can use to manipulate some strings and sort of spice up what you're doing with text.